Voilà.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Tram Shop. We're meeting yet again. It's an information session regarding our mobility plan of tomorrow, connected, innovative, and sustainable. How nice that so many people showed interest and came here tonight. We will be speaking Luxembourgish here tonight, but there is interpretation available into French, so don't hesitate to take headphones. You can also get interpreting into German and into English. So, as so many events, we're using the COVID check system here again. Some people are still wearing their masks, that's up to you. And there will also be a live stream. This is also something that we started using with the pandemic. And thanks to the stream, everybody will know what we are doing here today. So in this sense, I wish everybody who has joined you via live stream very welcome. So tonight's session regarding the mobility plan of tomorrow was preceded by a lot of work. We had a first meeting last year, and we launched a survey in which you participated, and you shared your mobility habits. So my first question would be, who participated in the survey? Can you show your hand? Well, quite a few people, actually. All of you. Well, no, maybe not everybody, but many of you. Keep your questions in mind, because later on you will have the possibility to ask your questions. And we have experts here tonight who will be able to answer your questions. We will also talk about the results of the survey and draw conclusions from these results. So I would like to start by introducing our podium with the first alderman of the City of Luxembourg, Serge Vilmes, the mobility alderman Patrick Goldschmidt, Dirk Ohm of the Architectural Engineering Bureau Dirk Faas. Then we have Paul Hoffman here, who is the director of the Mobility Bureau, and Rafael da Silva, who's in charge of this project, and he is from the Circulation Service. Now I would like to give the floor to the first alderman of the City of Luxembourg, Serge Vilmes. Thank you very much, Mrs. Gales. I will just speak briefly. I would like to welcome all of you in the name of the aldermen, and I want to excuse Mrs. Polfa, who can't be here tonight. This is the second conference regarding our mobility plan of tomorrow. We will be presenting the results of the public survey and the work of the Mobility Council and the analysis of the offices that are accompanying us during this process. We will define aims, and Patrick Goldschmidt knows much more about all of this than I do, so I would like to give the floor to him. Can you tell us what's awaiting us tonight?
Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vilmes. Good evening also from my side. I can't see all of you, unfortunately, but I see that there are many people here tonight. Welcome. We are very happy that you're showing so much interest in the topic of mobility today and mobility of the future. I would like to welcome all the colleagues from the Alderman Council and City Council, and I would also like to thank all the services and bureaus that have contributed to our work. You have also participated in the work, actually. But because without your contribution, we wouldn't have anything to present tonight, actually. We have launched a survey in autumn last year, and over 8,000 people participated. Last year, we held a press conference during which we presented the first results. And these results can also be found on our website, mobilitetsplan.vdl.lu. Why are we here tonight? We are here not only to, well, we're not here to talk about the entire survey and all the questions, but we want to have a look at the results of the survey. We want to present the results to you and start a discussion about which goals we have, what point do we want to reach, what are the next steps that we have to take together. Paul Hoffman will present in 3 parts. First, he will present the results of the survey, as I've mentioned before. We have questioned all the different participants of mobility, be it pedestrians, car drivers, users of public transport, etc. We also asked questions regarding conflicts between these different actors, and this is a big part of the topic. Then we will also talk about our estimations and estimations of our advisors and advisor teams. They are working every day on the situation and how to improve it, and they have recommendations for us. And then we have a mobility council. The council met a number of times. On the 21st of September, it met to talk about the launch of the project. On the 14th of December, it discussed the results of the survey. And on the 10th of February, the Mobility Council got together in order to establish goals that they believe would be necessary. As you know, the Mobility Council is composed of many different members from many different fields, and you will see this also in the presentation tonight. The members come from different political parties, from different branches of the City of Luxembourg and the services of the municipality of Luxembourg, and we also have representatives of the government, the police, associations such as the USIL, Pro Velo, the logistics cluster, or Luxembourg for Finance, in order to also represent the economic field. And the trade unions are obviously also represented. What are the challenges of a city like Luxembourg? Well, you know it. You live here and you see it every day. Our city is growing from year to year, and if we have a look at the numbers and the figures and our general management plans of the surface, we expect an increase of 1/3 of the work surface and around 30% of more inhabitants. This means that we have to establish a balance between these two fields, a balance also in the field of mobility. So these are the points that we will be discussing and presenting tonight. We want to have a vivid discussion with you, and you will all have the possibility to ask your questions, give comments, make suggestions. You can do that after the presentation. So what can we say today? Well, regarding mobility, we did a lot of work in the recent past. The City of Luxembourg and the government have done a lot of work, starting with the tram, which is being built and which will still be enlarged towards the Cloche d'Or and even the airport. These extensions will be followed by even further development of the tram line. We had to take many aspects into account, and we tried to complete the work by enlarging also the cycling paths. We saw a decrease in parking lots as well. 2018, we had to close Avenue de la Gare for cars. It's currently only accessible to buses and other means of public transport, as well as for pedestrians and cyclists. This project of Avenue de la Gare needs to be implemented in the near future. It's already ready. And I would ask the citizens that live in the district to show a little bit of patience, because it will take some time to implement the project, but we are conducting the work and keeping everything in mind. We want to give priority to cyclists, and for this reason we have taken away around 120 parking lots on the surface and 150 underground parkings. We want to conduct a cycling path through Boulevard Prince Henri to Pescator to make sure that cyclists can use this path in a safe way. Last week we presented a project for Müllebach because we will see parking lots disappearing there as well in order to enlarge the cycling path. A few weeks ago, the Municipality Council voted in favor of the cycling bridge. This is also a project which will strengthen soft mobility. 2017 and 2018, we took the decision to switch the Velo system to electric bicycles, which was a very important decision. Back then, people were criticizing our decision, but now we see that it was the right decision because we have twice as many users thanks to that change than before. We are doing a lot to strengthen and foster pedestrians and cyclists while not forgetting public transport and cars. We have to remain accessible, an accessible place. We have to do that in order to protect the shops also and the restaurants in the City of Luxembourg. We have to keep our city open, and for this reason, we have to think about all actors of mobility. So this is an introduction from my part. So should I give the floor back to Mrs. Gales first? Okay, then I give the floor back to you, and I thank you very much, and I wish us all a very pleasant evening. Thank you, Mr. Goldschmidt. Now we will continue right away with the survey that we've been mentioning. What were the results of the survey? What are the analysis showing us? What are the conclusions? And what are the next steps? Let's ask the director of the Mobility Service, Paul Hoffmann.
Und schon auch direkt zwei kleine Fragen und den Herr Hoffmann.
And I have two brief questions. So, how are you experiencing the entire process? Well, I must say that I think it's very interesting. It's very vivid. There's a lot of life in it. We can see it simply by looking into the room. There's so many people here. Many people are interested. And if we see how many people participated in the survey, we conclude that people are obviously interested, that this process is important, and actually this is a perfect starting point in order to launch the project. What's the biggest challenge? How can we respect all the different mobility possibilities? Well, you answered your question yourself. We have to take into account all the different needs of all the users. That's our job, and that's the job and the goal of the mobility plan. But it's also a challenge because it's transversal. Thank you, Mr. Hoffmann. Now the floor is yours, and have fun listening. So I would start with my presentation. A lot of things, or some things, have been mentioned already. And let's have a look at the stage we're at. During the first presentation, we presented the different stages that run through the mobility plan. The first step was an analysis and an inventory, and we defined the shortcomings, opportunities, and challenges. We conducted a survey, and now we are in phase 2. What's phase 2? Well, first of all, it is a phase during which we want to elaborate and define goals, which we would like to reach thanks to our mobility plan. We want to give ourselves indicators for assessment in order to be able to assess later on if we have reached our goals that we have derived. And then in the next step, we would like to take into account the scenarios for the different users of mobility. And this is the phase that we are in right now. So how do we conduct the goals. We're basing ourselves on 3 pillars. We would like to establish them together. One pillar is the participation of the citizen. This means we have to organize conferences such as this one today and such as the one in October, and we will have more such conferences in future. Then another pillar is the survey. It has been presented during a press conference, yet nevertheless, we believe it's important to present every detail to you tonight. The Mobility Council is also very important, and it's working very diligently. It had 3 meetings already. On the 10th of February, we organized a workshop. It was a very interesting experience. We had a lot of controversial discussions, as it should be when we talk about mobility. But it was very interesting. We received very important input, which we will implement into the project. And then we have a 3rd pillar, which is the view from outside, so to say. It's an analysis of our situation in the City of Luxembourg through external offices and companies and experts. All of these aspects flow together in order to allow us to take a decision on a political level. This process happens through an exchange. This event tonight is an exchange, and it should also be clear that the decisions that we are taking or that will be taken are not set in stone and are flexible to change. Now let's talk about the survey. We conducted a survey last year, and I would like to present some important figures to you. You can actually access the entire survey online. I will present the most important results to you. First of all, you should know that a lot of people participated, approximately 8,500, and there were over 2,000 comments, and around 4,250 written statements. 46% of the people who participated live in Luxembourg City, and 54 live outside of the city and either visit our city or work here. Now let's have a look at these 54% of people who don't live here. 29% of those live in a close vicinity of Luxembourg City, and 36% of the people who participated live further away, such as another country, such as France, Belgium, and Germany, and 35% live in Luxembourg, in a country but not that close to Luxembourg City. So you see that it was a very balanced participation. Now, the first part that I would like to present to you is the general habits people have regarding their mobility. We noticed that the question regarding their main use of transport showed that pedestrians or people going by foot was a very common answer. A lot of people go by foot often, every day or almost every day. And many people also use a bicycle. It's on spot number 4. 31% of people who live in Luxembourg City use the bicycle once per day or a couple of times per week.
But for there's a lower level for commuters and lower level of those not taking over. It's 43% in the city, 78% of people from beyond the city limits. The electric scooters have been mentioned as well. So this is rather marginal in usage, but we can say afterwards that in conflicts that are being generated, these electric scooters are represented overproportionately. Then public transportation or individual traffic. Here we can see that within the city, or those people using every day or several times a week a bus is rather high, with 60% cars for city persons, 47% is lower. And it's quite interesting to see that for commuters, it's the opposite tendency. Higher usage of cars, 58% using it regularly. On the other hand, 45% are saying that they take regularly the bus. So this is a counter-reflection for those living in the city or coming into the city from the periphery. The second transport means is foot traffic, second means of transportation. So how long do your journeys on foot take on average in the city of Luxembourg? City people, 58% are 10 minutes or more. 45%, so between 750 and 900 meters, according to your speed and troop from the glacis you can reach to the downtown area. So there's a willingness and availability to be more consequent in your movements on foot within the city. And a lot of people are indicating that they actually are walking and they're willing to do longer parts. It's higher for commuters, path on foot or first mile, last mile. So from their bus until their work location or to do shopping, higher representation than for the city dwellers as such. What about the perception of people concerning the quality of infrastructure? Here we can say that the results we found out were rather positive concerning the situation of the infrastructure, the width of walkways, are there obstacles or not? You can see in these figures that we have a rather positive overview here. The same goes for the quality of transfers. So with a huge majority, it can be said here that the quality of these traffic lights, for instance, are good. So how long do you have to wait at the red light? Just a subjective feeling for all participants of traffic, be it in cars, on foot. Everybody thinks that traffic lights are lasting too long. But pedestrians think, according to a slight majority, that they have to wait too long at red lights. Next, transportation means cycling, bicycles. First of all, who has a bicycle? First question. 58% of people within the city do have a bicycle, and 30% are saying that they don't have a bicycle or not using a bicycle, which is relatively high, we have to say quite clearly. In the periphery, this rate is a little bit lower, 40% of people saying that they do have a bicycle, and people are saying that they don't have one and don't use one. But there's only a marginal role. When you do have a bicycle, you have your own. And for employers, it's not really a general means of availability for movements on a bicycle made available by the employers. Just 3% say they do have this availability from their employers, but the renting system with 31% in the city saying that they regularly use the rental bicycles, and the figures we see, especially since e-bikes have been introduced, we have a strong increase for subscriptions and usage as well. Here again, the distances being covered were interesting. 64% of people living in the city have 10 minutes or more as a distance, meaning 2.5 to 3 kilometers in the urban areas on your bicycle. That's a certain distance to be covered already. And it's a little bit like for foot traffic. People within the city are willing to cover larger distances on bicycles or on foot. For commuters, it's a little bit different. The explanation might be the same, that the path of those people doing the last bit until their workplace or their shopping area have a higher value for this last distance. Then we have asked for what purposes bicycles are used on a daily basis. So it's the recreational, 57% recreational, quite high. Then second, way to work or to school. Interesting to see that within city, 27% of people are indicating that they do their shopping on bicycle. 11% are using their bicycle for professional meetings. 14% of people are indicating that all daily activities are being covered on bicycle. The figure next to it is covering in part the area of people having a bicycle or not. For 34% are using rarely or not at all a bicycle. Infrastructure that we have has been evaluated as well. That will not come as a surprise that we have quite clearly two main improvement potentials that have been indicated, which are quite known as well. We have the quality of the cycling infrastructure. Very clearly, the result here is to say that more dedicated bicycle infrastructures in their own area are needed in the city area just for bicycles. And secondly, the missing parts in the cycling network indicate a very high improvement potential. Again, we know about this, and this survey is simply confirming the impression we already had. Let's move on to public transport then. What have been the opinions expressed here? What distances have been covered? 75% of people in the city are indicating that between 10 and 30 minutes are being covered when they take a bus. 10 to 30 minutes covering about 8.5 kilometers being covered like that. Within our city, this is one from Lux Expo, the railway station, so once across the whole downtown area. Most distances are 10 to 20 minutes, but even with 11% having higher values than 30 minutes by bus, well, there's a willingness to have even longer distances covered in public transport. Evaluation of our offer, largely positive, covering what we have in our customer barometer as well. The results we get over there are more or less in line with the values we reached here. The density, the driving hours, punctuality is valued positively as well concerning information, cleanliness, and safety are really highly valued as well. So we had a very positive surrounding here. One element not being mentioned on this slide that was still mentioned and coming up again and again is that in the evening and on the weekend, we have a demand for higher density for bus circulars and longer hours spreading into the evening as well. So better availability in the evenings and on the weekends as well. And then to end, motorized private transport, who does have a car? 63% of people in the city have their own car. 7% have a service or professional car. 16% are sharing privately a car at home. For people outside the city area, the percentage of those having a car themselves is higher, and also of people who have a service or professional car. So the motorized part is even higher than within the city for those people who took part in the survey. This is covering what we did know about the vignettes here concerning the usage. So we have a high level arrival in the city. If you compare to other major cities abroad, there's no values between 70 or 80% or even a higher motorization rate within cities. But 19% are indicating that they don't have a car, which is quite interesting. Nevertheless, a sharing offer is being established with 5% of people within city limits who say that they are using car sharing proposals. Then for the distance being covered for those people living in the city, 2/3 of the distances are between 10 to 20 minutes. 20 minutes, meaning 6 kilometers in this case. This is once more or less across the whole downtown area. So rather long distances. But what is quite interesting here is this: if you have a look at the distance of 6 kilometers between the different buses, bicycles, and cars, they're more or less comparable. So there's a relatively high potential amongst people still covering these distances below 10 or between 10 and 20 minutes. There's a potential to convince them to do their distances with an according offer, not by car, but possibly with a bus, a bicycle, or on foot. For commuters, this phenomenon is slightly different, of course. So we can see that the distances being covered here are substantially higher. 45% for the 20 to 40 minutes, being 40 kilometers, and even a higher value longer than 40 minutes. This is linked to a high commuter rate coming from beyond our country limits. So this explains the relatively high value here. Infrastructure evaluation, once again, rather positive, except for one point that I will mention. Advances without peak hours in the individual car traffic is seen positively. This is being shared everywhere. If you have a look at the lower value in peak hours with your car, of course, there's no good way to cross the city. And in the survey, this was quite clear. 18% of people saying that even in peak hours, they can cross the city in an adequate way. 9% of the commuters. Then stationary traffic, parking situation. City dwellers have 2/3 of private parking lots and 1/3 in the public areas. Public area in the city for those living there with their vignette. Well, for most people, it's for free and the carte loge, and so parking your car is rather free, which is being used by 1/3. Interesting is the workplace situation linked to that. We have been able to see that for city dwellers, so the second last underneath, they have fixed, permanent free at their working at. Then 62% of people living in the city don't have to worry about a place to park their car because they have personally reserved a pass. Only 38% are parking their car in the public area. So if we have a look at the area of 10 kilometers all around the city, we have 64% of people having predetermined parking a spot at work, and only around 1/3 being 36% in the public area. The longer the distance, the smaller the rate of those having their own personal spot. So from abroad, only 27% have a spot made available by their employers. 19% then for those renting a parking lot. Quite interesting observation here as well. And to conclude this part, indicating that people are telling us nevertheless that it's relatively complicated to get a parking spot on their final destination. In general, we had the situation for the workplace, but the perception here is that it's relatively difficult to find a parking lot. Afterwards, we will be talking about the specific situation and figures, not necessarily reflecting this subjective perception. Then let's talk about conflict. conflicts. First of all, we've asked at what rate do you have conflicts at all, and with what transport mode do you have conflicts, starting with pedestrians. Conflict situation here is rather that people are telling us that they don't have such a strong perception of conflicts. 64% are indicating that they do not have or only partly conflicts with other transport modes. Other users. Here's only the top three biggest conflicts for pedestrians with cyclists. 64% indicating that they have problems with bicycle users. Then 58% of pedestrians are indicating conflicts with scooters, and only a very small amount, 2% have, and then parking cars, 46%. What about users of bicycles? Conflict values are higher. Only 39% of people are saying that they have hardly any or no perception of conflicts with other traffic users. Biggest conflict for cyclists is with cars, 78% driving cars, and 64% with parked cars, and 53% conflicts with pedestrians. For car users, similar as for pedestrians, perception is not as strong of conflicts. 69% of people are saying in their cars that they do not have major conflicts with anyone else. And when they have a conflict, well, for car users, it's mainly conflicts with their own kind, if I may say so, other cars or car users. After that, we have bicycles and then delivery traffic. So far, a summary of the survey. The survey as a whole is to be found online. You can have a look at all detailed figures. This was just a summary of the major insights of the survey. Let's talk about the second pillar now, evaluation of our processing team composed by external officers that we have and our own internal services where I have quite a strong involvement as well. Evaluation here as well of this processing team concerning different transport modes, starting with pedestrian traffic. It is being indicated here that our network for pedestrians is quite dense with a lot of direct accesses, a city of short distance accesses. For new infrastructures being built, it is quite clearly the case that the demands concerning quality of space, the width, barrier-free access, all this is being respected. But in the existing part, the historic part that grew in course of time, there is quite obviously a topic of usable width, so walking paths are not wide enough, and if it is the case, the urban furniture is reducing it in part, so this is not quite as high as for the new infrastructure. Then transition possibilities to cross the street easily. We have a very dense network of pedestrian passengers on all axes. It's rarely the case that you have to go farther than 150 meters to have traffic crossing for pedestrians. And in the survey, we could see already what is the waiting time at traffic lights for pedestrians. Actually, we are at a maximum of 50 seconds. And in peak hours, it can go up to 70 seconds. I'm quite in agreement that 70 seconds are subjectively and objectively in the perception quite long, and we have a potential to have better values in the future.
We also noticed that we are a rather small city in the sense that you can walk, use the bicycle, or use public transport in order to reach all of your destinations in a rather easy way. Regarding topography or barriers, due to the differences in levels of ground levels, we use lifts. And by using lifts, be it lift in Pfaffenthal or Grund or bridges we can overcome those barriers. We will also have bridges in future projects in order to help us to overcome these natural barriers. We have a rather large and attractive pedestrian zone in the upper city, but we have to admit that that's the case only in the upper city. And we need to see if we would like to change that situation and enlarge it. So what's the opinion of the experts? Well, we should have a route network all around the city. That was one conclusion. We have 3 different infrastructure types. First, we have the traffic with the cars. Then we have a mixed traffic with bicycles and cars, and then we have bicycles and pedestrians. This is also something that represents the results of the survey, namely that most traffic is mixed traffic, which leads to conflicts and bad experiences for users. So this is a point that we can improve or at least analyze. Something else that also represents an aspect of the survey is the fact that we have incomplete cycling path network. We have to improve the situation and the offer of cycling paths. As a matter of fact, we have spots where you can leave your bike all around the city, but we should improve that situation as well. We should also make sure that we have closed and steel structures where people can leave their bicycles without worry. We should make sure to implement this near the train station, for instance, but not all throughout the city. Something else that they concluded is that because of the structure of our city, we have rather short distances. This means that many destinations can be reached by bicycle. We also can stress out that cyclists can use lifts and bridges to overcome natural barriers. E-bicycles have a clear advantage when it comes to overcoming natural barriers, such as steep uphills. And the recommendation that we received was to have the Vélo system really all throughout the city and at more locations in order to foster the cycling culture in our city. Now let's talk about the bus and our bus network. We have a rather good offer, that's what people say. We have good connections and a good schedule. Normally, there is a bus station every 300 meters, covering 97% of the surface of the city. The distances between the bus stops are in close proximity, and most destinations can be reached without having to change bus or change only once. Especially during rush hour, we have a schedule with a lot of buses with a maximum waiting time of 7.5 minutes. This is very interesting also for people who work or live further away from the city center. And still, if you're outside of the city center, in close proximity to Luxembourg, you only have to wait 10 to 20 minutes. Now, regarding the city center, we should see if we can improve the bus offer during the evenings and weekends. There's a shortage of capacities during rush hours regarding public transport, such as buses and trams. During rush hour, many people use the different means of public transport, and we should see if we can stack the offer up. Most of our bus lines drive through Luxembourg City and the main train station, which is an advantage and a disadvantage in the sense that, of course, there is a traffic, but if you want to access other parts of the town, you will have to change bus at one of these two locations. This is something that was pointed out by the experts, but it became also clear when analyzing the results of the survey. So we need to see how we can solve this issue in the future. It's also very clear to us that there is potential for improvement regarding the transition from the regional bus service to the city bus service. Here we have to build different transition points, and we have to make sure that they are in sync with the regional bus line tracks. We have a very well-structured street network. That's one conclusion of the experts. We have a very good implementation of tools which are aimed to calming the traffic situations, such as 30 kilometers per hour zones. We have a stressed traffic in the city center, especially during rush hour, and are reaching our limits. A topic which is very important to us is the detour route around the city. We have to come to the conclusion that it might not suffice the need and may not fulfill its role of fully slowing and calming the traffic that comes to Luxembourg City. We see this when accidents happen. People tend to drive through Luxembourg City instead of using the motorway to either avoid accidents or traffic jams. Regarding transition points and changing means of transport, we see a big potential to foster buses and a soft mobility. It's a rather technical aspect. There is also a potential for improvement regarding traffic management, namely how we steer the traffic over and with the help of red lights, for example. Now, regarding resting traffic, we have a big offer on our territory. We have around 36,000 parking lots, public parking lots. That's a lot. Nevertheless, it's noticeable that these spots are used, especially in the core of the city and during rush hour. But a lot of parking spots are also taken in residential areas. We also have a paid parking on many places, which allows us to steer in a way who parks where. People living in residential areas of Luxembourg City have an advantage here. We have 12,800 parking lots in parking houses. We have reserves here, which we could use and put on offer. Currently, a number of parking lots are being refurbished, but in Luxembourg City, in the city center, and near the main train station, we always have additional parking lots that are being held back. Nevertheless, the 12,800 parking lots are a lot, considering the size of our city. And during the day, we also see many cars parked at park and ride parking stations. So this would be the summary regarding this part. Now I would like to talk about the Mobility Council. This is the third pillar of our project. We have a very interesting council, and we are contributing to a very interesting process. Now, we had a workshop on the 10th of February. Now, I want to show you here. This was how it was composed. We had different topics that were discussed, and the council was divided in different groups, and they were working on different topics and having vivid discussions. They were exchanging views and ideas. And all the suggestions and ideas and comments that were made during that workshop was pinned to a virtual wall. Due to COVID, we did everything online via WebEx. So we wrote all the conclusions like virtual post-its on a virtual wall. And later on, we tried to define goals and work on viewpoints and common ground. Now I would like to present a number of suggestions, not all of the suggestions, but the most important ones. Obviously, I cannot show you everything, but only the most important or most interesting points. So we analyzed the different means of transport. Let's start with cyclists. Regarding cyclism, the council said that we need to provide the correct infrastructure in order to allow people to use the bicycle in a safe way, and we have to motivate people to use the bicycle. If we want people to cycle, we have to give them the frame to be able to do so. Cyclists encounter certain conflicts with other means of transportation, and we have to analyze these conflicts and react to it accordingly. Now we clearly noticed that our network has to be improved. We have to improve the situation, fix problems if there are any. We have to give the right infrastructure to allow people to use the bicycle. We have to improve that situation. So this was one recommendation from the Mobility Council. We should perhaps rethink the structure of the network. The idea was perhaps to create connections to neighboring municipalities and to perhaps improve these connections. The idea was also to have transversal connections to the different districts. Now, what were the recommendations regarding car traffic and individual traffic? Well, the council also mentioned the contournement, so the detour route around the city. It stressed its importance. An additional street to redirect the traffic would certainly be useful. We're thinking here about Cessange. We should have a hierarchy in our street network. It should be communicated clearly. And the drivers should also be able to understand and identify the different roads that they drive on, which roads are more, on which roads can you drive faster, where are schools in close proximity where you need to slow down, etc. The idea was also to have less cars on the surface of roads, for instance, by implementing group parking lots in housing areas, such as Langfur. We presented such a project actually yesterday for that district. And then it also said that it would be necessary to adapt and increase the offer of park and ride parking lots at the outskirts of the city. The bus system and cycling paths would have to be adapted accordingly. And what were the recommendations regarding public transportation? Well, it said that we need to improve and enlarge the network. We would need better infrastructure. We would need separate bus lanes and adapt the red light system to the buses. It recommended the introduction of express buses, so the direct connections connecting two dots directly. So we're talking about the radial network. So there was clearly a wish for faster connections. And then there was also a recommendation to improve the transition points and the transition from regional buses to local city buses. The idea was to let as little regional buses enter the core of Luxembourg City as possible. So this is a summary of the recommendations made by the Mobility Council. Those are the three pillars: citizen participation, survey, and Mobility Council. So we tried to draw the most important points. These are goals, and out of these goals, we want to develop strategies, and out of these strategies, we should take measures. This will follow in the stages 3 and 4 of the mobility plan, but we're not there yet. Currently, we are establishing goals, and these goals are based on these 3 pillars. And for this reason, I would like to present the main goals that we have elaborated. These goals are not set in stone. This is all open for discussion. The first goal is regional and transregional accessibility. What do we have to do or to have in order to reach this goal? Well, first of all, we need an attractive connection provided by public transportation. We need this attractive offer in our region and in our city. We need an optimal transition and optimal transition points between the regional traffic and the local traffic, be it means of public transport or private transport. We have to think here about organized and well-managed transition points at the outskirts. We have to better distribute and better use the detour route around the City of Luxembourg. What can we do in order to ease the stress on these important points and spots? How can we avoid long transits from one point of the city to another point of the city because of the strong traffic? How can we reduce the number of cars in our city? We have to use these detour routes. Then we have to strengthen the regional cycling paths. We have to also make sure that people can use their bicycles in order to enter our city from outside, and we can only do so by providing the appropriate infrastructure. Another goal is securing perspectives for development. What does that mean? Well, we see a growth regarding the citizen and the number of workplaces in the future. We have to make sure that we can react properly to this growth. We have to provide perspectives in order to allow for this growth. What do we need for that? Well, first of all, we need a street network and roads that work. It needs to be strengthened. And we need to see how we can improve certain stress points, such as Boulevard de Sessange or Boulevard de Merle. We have to enlarge public transportation. We have to finish the work on the tram network, and we have to have a better offer regarding the buses.
And then obviously as well, an extension of soft mobility, quite evidently. Then another point of importance is accessibility for all neighborhoods or all points of interest that we have within a city with all transport modes. There's no exclusivity approach for one or two transport modes. It has to remain possible that you have the city still accessible for all transport modes that we have in a meaningful way, of course. Then we need an attractive networking between the different transport modes, allowing transitions when necessary from one transport mode to another in an optimum way. And then we need also a high-quality integration of the new development areas, so new neighborhoods being created, Porte Hollerich or Kübeberg, where mobility has to be thought through right from the start. Then third goal, mobility for all. We can say that within the city we've reached quite a lot already. An international barrier-free access award has been given to the city, but this is an objective area where we still have potential for improvement, especially in the city itself. We are really on the right path. And in different neighborhoods, individually, there's certainly the remaining potential for improvement for the bus stops or appropriate road crossings for persons with reduced mobility and improved conditionality has to be created. A second theme here would be ensuring access to all means of transport, regardless of social status, generation, or income. There has to be mobility available for all in a barrier-free or barrier-reduced area for certain transport modes. So reduce them as much as possible or take these obstacles out completely. First step for this is free public transport already introduced. There's no financial barrier any longer, but there should be a better approach in an optimized way for already existing and attractive sharing offers. And other more important element, access to information and offers should be really completely open for each and everyone. It's not each and everyone a digital native, I have to say, allowing to handle all these situations with his or her smartphone. There should not only be a restriction to just this one means of connection, which is not evident for each and everyone. Just one example. The fourth objective is maintaining and improving quality of life. First important part here is high quality of public spaces to be created or refurbished. This is extremely important on the one hand in the way to use these areas. How can I create or manage them in an optimum way for different transport modes and their users? And on the other hand, there should also be a quality to stay and dwell. This has to be strengthened. You can see a photo of the Pariser Platz. There has to be a high level of quality to render these areas really attractive and worthwhile dwelling. Then avoidance and reduction of through traffic in residential areas with the corresponding nuisances as well. Then promoting new sustainable urban districts with innovative mobility concepts integrated right from the start. Porte Hollerich is one example with a new dwelling areas where mobility has to be introduced in a perfectly organized way with a high level of quality. Same goes for one level below, where we need an optimization for connections to public transportation and for soft mobility as well, also in smaller areas. Vivre sans voiture, living without a car, that has to be necessary to allow these as well, and to create a surrounding conditionality allowing this system to work in an adequate way. And then the last point, this leads me almost to an end, goal number 5, protection of livelihoods and environmental sustainability. This is rather a chapter Concerning environmental aspects, first point quite clear here, and this is a general topic being of importance each and every time. Maximum road safety for all road users, and then the health and environmental aspects, reduction of health impairments due to traffic and climate damaging emissions. Conditions have to be created as an over-ranging objective for all areas, and finally an optimization and an adequate usage and organization of the surfaces, the land, the public area, being in the support of alternative forms of mobility or the general use of existing resources. So like I said, with these three pillars, I try to give you a summary. It's not in all details that I've given this overview, but this has led to the next steps to be prepared, and we will detail them even more. It's not excluded that additional objectives are being included as well, or certain objectives being deepened in the approach, but this is the present state of the matter that we would like to present for discussion here tonight. What will these next steps be? Like I said, we are right now in the second phase of our mobility plan with tonight's event, with the definition of objectives and with strategies and packages of measures for the implementation of these measures for all transport modes. And we will get back to you in summertime again for a next discussion round. And this will lead us to another public event towards the end of the whole process, foreseen for the end of 2022. As indicated already, all the things we've just shown and more are to be found on the internet site Mobilitätsplan at vdl.lu. It is still possible and wished for that suggestions, remarks, or comments are still being delivered. Any type of suggestions you might have anytime, this can be sent to the mail address you find here on the screen. We will take it all up, read all messages, and if possible, integrate in the process. And this leads me to the end of this presentation. Thank you very much. So thank you, Mr. Hoffmann, for this very detailed overview with all the elements of information. And now, ladies and gentlemen, and persons in this live stream as well, mobilitätsplan.vdl.lu for more information. But now you have an opportunity to ask questions as well. We are really looking forward to it. All experts are right here. I will leave a little bit of spotlight here. You can see us, but we don't see you really because it's really bright up front here. So on the side areas, we have mic runners for all those wanting to ask a question or deliver a comment. It's always the most difficult to deliver the first comment, but we have one courageous representative in the middle. Wait till a mic runner is coming up to you, allowing you to talk. So there's a gentleman in the middle area. You can invite you to come up front. Wait for the mic. Is it switched on? Is it working? Do you understand me? Yeah, we can hear you at least. So what I'm wondering about is you are not indicating the text passages freely. Where citizens are allowed to speak, the text is not shown. One voice is right here about pedestrians. 83% of citizens are pedestrians. I'm part of it. On the 29th of November 2018, I've produced a claim at the City of Luxembourg. I sent a letter to Mr. Goldschmidt. It was raining, and I was at a crossroads, and there was no automatic green light. So those being the most ecological, the traffic friendliest, and the most often in the city are being discriminated. Mrs. Mayer said the following. She answered, concerning your proposal to have an automatic green phase for pedestrians in the traffic light switching. I'm unfortunately obliged to inform you that such a programming would lead to an unnecessary slowing down of traffic. That's the reason why I'm really sorry to have to inform you that the Council of Aldermen can not deliver any follow-up to your demand. Very short answer, Mr. Hoffman. You don't need strategy. You need more sympathy for pedestrians. And I have a question to all the present here. Who is in favor for an automatic switching of traffic lights for pedestrians to green? By show of hand. We can convey the message, if you like. But we are at a citizens' meeting. Mr. Goldschmidt, are you in favor of ending the discrimination of pedestrians by a simple act? So traffic lights, as in lots of cities in the world, already being automatically switched to green light for pedestrians. You did receive an answer by Mrs. Mayor concerning a very specific crossroads you were indicating. No, several ones. So I'm a lot in the city as a pedestrian. Mr. Hoffman explained it, and you've seen as well, there's still potential for improvement. If you think that in the rest of the world it's a better place to be, I can change that. We are doing as best as we can for you as well. No, Mr. Goldschmidt, I'm a lot on foot in the city when I have to settle business. And tonight we are here to talk about the mobility plan, and we would like to talk about that. You can be critical. You have received an answer to your question. It's not just that we as politicians are preparing all answers. If the survey is indicating that for the crossroads you have been mentioning specifically, it's not possible to do this right now. We can talk about all crossroads now, if you like, but we are here together with you to talk about and prepare the mobility plan. Improvements will be made. This is clear. That's what we all want. All this has been duly noted. We have launched a survey. 8,000 people participated. Points of criticism have been mentioned. But where can we read them? Please, the 4,000 answers, put them online so we can have an overview ourselves. No problem. Or you might do as well as is being done normally for a qualified survey, a qualified evaluation of the concrete text of people. This is missing. You are holding back here. This is disillusioning for all participants in these surveys. But you said that was in 2018. You said your demand had been formulated in 2018. You get the answer. The problem is not being solved. Please, move the microphone. And beyond that, Mrs. Mayor says it's an unnecessary slowing down of the traffic flow. We are living in a car-oriented city, and 83% of people are on foot. Yes, but now we are 2022. Mr. Hoffman will certainly answer, but nothing has changed in between. I'm still waiting at traffic lights. Have to go around and no green. 1.66 m. I'm not as quick as many sports people. Thank you for that. But Mr. Hoffman, you can answer as well if you may. Well, I'm trying to take the different elements. The specific crossroads can be mentioned afterwards in a discussion. But in general, I would like to say about this, and this has been delivered as a message at the survey as well. People have the impression generally that they have to wait too long at traffic lights. So the challenge for these kinds of crossroads is the interest you might have for bus traffic to be crossed over crossroads as fluidly as possible. So priority has to be even better for buses at traffic lights. There's a specific demand, and the services will certainly take this into account. And in a certain degree, the flow of individual traffic has to be guaranteed as well. This is part of the approach as well. And we have cycling infrastructures and more crossroads. There's a separate traffic light for them as well. And then we have pedestrians. And unfortunately, no one has been been able to have a technical solution to take more seconds than 60 out of 1 minute, and this has to be spread evenly as much as possible amongst the different users with certain priorities. This is a permanent process because demands are changing permanently at Crossroads. But in general, I'd like to say that there are certainly priorities, and certain Crossroads do foresee a reinforced priority for public transport. This is being asked for, and specifically here we can do this afterwards. Talking about individual Crossroads, there's certainly certain explanations why things are just as they are. Thank you for that. Another question now, please. I have to walk back a step back to avoid the spotlights. Please, you can come up front, and you'll be giving a microphone. You have a microphone. Excellent. Moyen, I just wanted to ask, in the City of Luxembourg, there's a lot of traffic problems with traffic lights going to red quickly. Wouldn't be a good thing to have intelligent computer-based systems react them automatically according to the numbers of cars arriving at certain crossroads and traffic lights? One question. Quite interesting what you've explained for cyclists as well. So Luxembourg to Esch, the connection that was announced, when will it be built? The cycling path now, yeah, the cycling path between Luxembourg, City of Luxembourg and Esch. And one last question, if I still may. I know there's more and more cars coming into town. Couldn't we have minibus stations bringing people to the downtown area, so park and ride with minibus connections into town? Thank you very much. Thank you for these questions. So concerning the first question, the computer you just indicated, we have them. We have it. It's a traffic computer, which is the centerpiece of our traffic management system. All our traffic lights are connected to this central management computer, and according to the demand and the traffic flows in the downtown area, there's permanent optimization as far as possible in technically to have a general management of traffic lights from a certain position. So we do have such a computer, and we have had it for a while. Concerning the cycling path to Esch, City of Luxembourg, we are relatively wrong position to say anything about that, but it's certainly being planned for. And certainly this will be coming up in a certain time perspective as well. But as I said, this is not an organization or a planning aspect for the City of Luxembourg itself. And then, if I understood correctly, the third question, it would be about organizing minibuses from the park and ride areas and the parking lots to the downtown area. We do have such a provision already. Our network with regular lines linked to parking lots to the points of interest in the downtown area. There are connections already, and you have specifically dedicated lines, 17, for instance, reinforcing the Bouillon with the upper city part. So we have special lines. So this has been practiced for years now. Okay, further questions? Yes, please, wait for the microphone. Oh, over there as well. We don't forget about you. No worries. So, you can ask a question from there. You don't have to come up front. I'm a pedestrian, enthusiastic pedestrian, and bus and recently tram user. And I really regret that this tram line has been installed just now. It could have been made available much earlier. A lot of problems could have been avoided. I don't want to have criticism about all. Things have been changing. I've been living for more than 30 years in the City of Luxembourg, and we have to be fair here and say that things have been improved in the course of time. It's quite clear. I would like to take my bicycle more often as well. And you said so. We don't have full connections everywhere, so it's not gladly and safely that I would dare to take my bicycle to go downtown. So this is an introductory remark. But I have to be fair as well and take into account all the efforts being made by the City of Luxembourg. There's one restriction here that I would like to express, and a thing that I've been missing here, an aspect that I did not find in other explanations. It's quite clear that in the public space, the private car traffic is in competition with all other traffic users. So, if you want to be fair for all groups of traffic users, we have to react. You have shown that 87% of the inhabitants like to be on foot in the city, so we have to take away space from the cars. We will never be able to reach a situation where the city is being more worthwhile living in than it's already the case if the individual car traffic is not taken out of the city even more. So less parking lots. There's a huge number of parking lots that have been built for high investments. So the space in the city is limited. And what was missing in your explanations from my point of view is a clear-cut commitment that there will be restrictions, restrictive decisions concerning individual car traffic. Otherwise, we will be having a lot of problems with this topic in the future. It's a bitter pill to swallow. Business people are involved here as well. Well, then people will not come to the city anymore and do their shopping, but business people in the city have lost a lot of customers to the huge shopping areas outside the city limits. And I think that more people would be coming to the downtown area again if there were good connections with public transport and safe connections for pedestrians as well. So far, my point of view. Thank you very much.
Now, one of our goals that we've defined stated, actually in a few places, that the surface usage should be adapted to the means of transport. This means that the resources need to be reorganized, at least partially. And this would actually sync with what you said. Now, remember Avenue de la Liberté, Boulevard Roosevelt, Avenue de la Gare. We have changed the landscape there. We see that the parking lots on the surface have disappeared or are disappearing. Just remember the project near Place de la Constitution, where we want to take away the parking lots in order to give the spot back to the pedestrians, to people. By doing that, we will take away space from private transport users, so car drivers, cars. So this is one of the goals that is clearly defined. And it is also something that you can actually see when you walk around outside of the city center. Well, very good. Now the next question, I think it's a lady.
I have actually a more technical question. So you said that this is a citizen participation, and so far the only thing I have seen is a very basic survey. Every time information it's actually shared with the citizens only with a very little time advantage. So this time, for example, this was only shared with roughly a week in advance before meeting. And every time I think we don't really have a place where we can give our opinion, cooperate. You say we can write to the email address there. I can assure you I have written several times to this Mobilitätsplan email, and I have never received an answer to my questions. Now, in your presentation, you mentioned there were roughly 4,000 comments, and the question is, how are you going to analyze them? Will they be taken in consideration, and how? Also, another point you mentioned here, it was also that your goals are set, but not set in stone. So also here, I have another question. Then as a citizen, as a resident, how can we participate to define and change also these goals if we think they're not appropriate to what we want to achieve?
Okay.
Also das ganz klar so.
Well, let's start with the emails. The emails that are sent to this email address are all being read. And I can assure you we receive a lot of emails. And with time, we send answers. So I am sure that you will still receive an answer. Just be a little patient. Regarding the survey, all the texts and comments and suggestions that were written are read and have been read. Rafael da Silva put them in categories defined by a topic in order to use an information or use this information that has been spread and quantify it. We filtered everything out from the comments and suggestions, and the process was very, time-consuming, but we did it. The idea is to really take on board the input that we have received in order to use it to implement our goals and to define our goals, and we will continue in doing so. We want to make sure that the comments will also be mirrored in the strategies and measures that we want to take in the next step. This is what we've done, and that what we'll be doing also in the future regarding all comments, also future comments that we will receive. Regarding the platform that you are wondering about, well, this is a platform, for instance. During my intervention, I tried to explain that this frame doesn't give us the possibility to explain everything that has been mentioned during the work process in detail. We would have to have 4 workshops per day to really take up all the details that have been discussed. So we try to summarize the main aspects. This is what we try to do tonight. And then, regarding the survey, the results of the survey and the comments are available on the website. You can access everything. You can access all the questions that have been asked with the corresponding results. Everything is online. You can, we can put all the comments online too and all the suggestions, but it will be very time-consuming for the reader to go through all of that. We did it. And I can assure you that we're taking into account what people are saying. Thank you very much, Mr. Hoffmann. Other questions? Everybody will have the possibility to ask a question. We have time. Now the microphone is working. Thank you very much. Now, I was listening to the goals that you mentioned. And I must say that you took everyone into account. The car drivers, pedestrians, cyclists, users of public transport. You have something for everyone. So I conclude tonight that we have actually not come any further since our last meeting, because the work still has to be implemented. So the analysis that we are basically doing here is who will have to give away some space and who will get some space. You don't want to take radical decisions, but the question that it comes down to is who will be prioritized. And what do we want to do? A bureau or experts will not be able to answer these questions for us. We have to answer this question, and politicians have to implement our decisions. So my question to the 2 politicians is the following. Have you asked yourself already what work you want to do more and what less in future? Mr. Ruppert, I think that Mr. Hoffmann clearly stated the goals. Goal number 2 clearly stated that we want to enlarge the public transport system, that we want to foster soft mobility and to do changes on the infrastructural level, Boulevard Merle, for instance. I mean, that's the goal. We want to foster the cyclists, pedestrians, public transport, and we are here collaborating, or at least in sync with the decisions taken by the government. We share their goals, actually, so it's complementing each other. So those are the priorities. Maybe you don't clearly see it through our presentation, but we have clear goals. Any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Wilmes. Any other comments or questions? Yes, the microphone is coming. I see another person wanting to make a comment. I have remembered. Okay, the floor is yours. So I want to ask a question to the external expert. So I suppose that we are happy that we have a real expert on board now. Now, if I look at the documents that were sent out with Call of Tenor, it stated the development and implementation of a sustainable environment plan. It stems from the EU. And this document states everything, all the goals. You don't necessarily need citizen participation or such an analysis of the survey. You have it all written down. Now, all we have to do is to implement it. It's all written down here. Now, do you want to implement what's written in here? Do we have CO2 goals? And now I would be interested in figures. I mean, we have to respect CO2 limits, don't we? Yeah. Was this the question? Yes. Oh, no, wait, I have another question. Mr. Oben. So when you were looking at these beautiful graphs and figures, did you notice anything that was different compared to all the other projects that you have done in the past? I mean, don't we have the same situation in every other city? We all know the issues, be it in London or in Paris or in Luxembourg. I mean, the issues are all identical all over the world, no? Now, I will answer to your first question. The guidelines that you just mentioned contains a very important part, namely the participation of the citizen. That is substantial in this guideline book that you just showed. This is what we did and what we will continue doing. So you're asking the question why we're doing this event tonight. Well, simply to respect this part of the guideline now. We have to take into account the individual aspects of each city. And we have been doing so here in Luxembourg. And we see that Luxembourg shows specificities compared to other cities. We have noticed that a lot of positive change has been conducted in Luxembourg in the past years, and it's something that can be used as a good example. Just to look at the density of the bus network. And, I mean, you have to also consider that a lot of improvements have been implemented. So we come along and we look at what needs to be improved even further. You also need to understand that we are criticizing on a very high level. But nevertheless, we have to continue our work. Now, how will we implement these strategies regarding public transport in future? How will we improve the system of bicycle paths? These questions are all very specific for Luxembourg. I agree that the fundament is shared between the cities, but the specificities are individual. And we have to take this into account. I mean, Luxembourg shows also problems that are very, very rare, actually, that you don't find in other regions and cities. You need to talk into the microphone, otherwise we can't hear you. The microphone is coming. Where do you see a bigger city that doesn't have people traveling to the city to work? That's nothing that is specific to Luxembourg. Every city hosts workspace and workplaces, and people travel to there. So I wonder, who are we doing this project for? for cross-border workers or for people living here? Do we want to improve the life quality in the city? And then what about CO2 reductions and figures? We have to take this into account. Okay, I will answer both questions if I may. Yes, it's true what you say. There are people working in every city and people traveling to the city to work. I agree with you. I travel around quite a bit and talk to other colleagues abroad. But do you know any city in Europe which has this amount of workers per capita in a city? I mean, we are exceptional. Yes, this phenomenon of people traveling to a place to work is common, but not to this extent. The other comment I wanted to make is something that I mentioned already during my first presentation last time, is your comment about the CO2 goals. But we have to act within a frame. And we have the frame which is defined by the air pollution reduction plan. This frame has been set already, and we have to navigate within this frame. We have to respect certain limits anyways. These goals have been set already anyways. They are not up to debate at all even. We have to respect certain conditions and limits, and if we don't do that, we can't launch our project anyways. We can't hear you without a microphone, unfortunately. I mean, people who are listening to the stream can't hear you if you don't talk about a microphone. Without a microphone. Now, next comment, please. Can you stand up, please, so that we can see you? Thank you very much. Do you have the microphone at hand? Not yet. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yes. Good evening, and thank you very much for this presentation. And it's nice that we have the chance to ask questions. I sometimes struggle to understand how the ideas that we're collecting here tonight, or in general, shall be implemented in future. How will we implement these goals? If you talk about private transport and parking lots, I think about the parking vignettes, the parking residential parking permissions. Now, you need to think about perhaps the fact that these parking permits costs money as well, and maybe it would be an idea to raise the price, then or reduce it or adapt it according to the needs, and then it would also be necessary to perhaps introduce 2 hours of free parking within the city center. Now, my other question was regarding the transition between regional buses to local city buses. I wonder how we want to motivate people to use the buses and change from regional buses to local buses on these transition points. We don't really motivate them. Instead, we are enlarging the parkings within the city center. So I don't understand the logic behind it. So are these aspects that you are perhaps thinking about? And where's the red line of this mobility plan? I don't really understand what it includes and what it doesn't include. So that's the questions that I have.
Schmidt?
Merci für die Fragen.
Thank you very much for these questions. I didn't hear everything, actually, or I didn't understand it. But regarding these vignettes, parking permissions, now we have been conducting a detailed analysis for the last months. We want to understand how people are using the parking spots in the districts. The questions that you are asking are questions that we are asking ourselves as well, be it paid parking or the district of use, in which area is this parking vignette valid. So we have to answer these questions. We also understand that people sometimes use the car even if they only want to travel for a kilometer. Those are points that we have in view and that we're working on. And we will see how we can improve the situation. Now, I don't have the answers to the other questions, or I didn't understand all your questions fully. Actually, maybe my colleague can answer.
I have to apologize. I did have the same acoustics problems and did not understand all the elements being mentioned. But in general, I'd like to say that all the ideas and approaches you've been mentioning are part of the process. They are part of the measures, or can possibly be part of the measures that would be foreseen in phase 4 of our process. Right now, we're talking about the general objectives. Then we will talk about strategies, and then specific measures for implementation. If these ideas have been delivered, well, they can be and will only be discussed in detail when we arrive at a stage for concrete measures to implement these strategies. So we haven't reached far enough to be able to do that, but in the course of the process, this will certainly be coming up. That's right. Over there was a show of hand. Could I ask you to stand and indicate your willingness? Over there, yes, indeed, and a microphone. Monica Goldschmidt, Provelo. I'm here as a representative of Provelo, and I'm also in the Mobility Advisory Board. Here now, I've been wondering what I'm doing here. And then again, other moments, really interesting what's going on. But most of all, in the public debate, things being mentioned by people, and a lot of interesting and attractive things have been mentioned, and I was really surprised concerning soft mobility proposals. All the things that have been said, but they are disappearing, they're vanishing. Where will they be coming up again? So point number 7, for instance, has not been mentioned publicly. It had been asked in the survey, who's willing amongst the car users to stop using the car? So 67% said, well, if the connections are better on foot, on a bicycle, or in buses, I'm willing to abandon the car. And what car users have been saying is really important. It should not be vanishing. And then it's a matter of have good connections, good networks for bicycle users, for instance. You should finally see that public opinion from a lot of city dwellers is that the car doesn't have an entitlement to the same space. If have a look at the Mobility Advisory Board, there have been a lot of discussions. I'd like to nuance this. No discussions, actually. We've been talking. There were presentations in the Mobility Advisory Board. And what Provelo has said didn't appear anymore. How can these downtown area be car-free? I would have loved to see it on the screen today as well, the indication that that has been set. A lot of contradictory discussions have been taking place in the Mobility Advisory Board. My question I have asked by letter to the Municipality of Luxembourg the contradictory expressions of what people have been saying in the Mobility Advisory Board. How are these different inputs being treated? Okay, who wants to answer this, Mr. Hoffman? Well, it is, as you said, there have been contradictory discussions. As a matter of fact, during our presentation, I've said already that we've been trying to have condensed representation of the things that were said, the tendencies, but not everything being said in Mobility Advisory Board could be mentioned, and not all nuanced and contradictory positions that have been expressed can be delivered in a summary presentation as tonight. But all these expressions are there. You know that there has been a report as well with all inputs, all points being mentioned, even those not reflecting consensus in the working party in the respective table or the whole mobility advisory board. This is the quintessence of such a discussion, and the aspects not being mentioned as a majority opinion in advisory board are still being represented here and taken into consideration. I do apologize once more that we had a compressed version of the results of the advisory board in tonight's presentation, all the while knowing that the fully detailed documents are all available. You do have the report. Now, someone shouting without a microphone. So without microphone, until now it worked quite nicely. Please wait till we give you the floor. Please wait. No, without microphone doesn't make any sense. Wait until you have a microphone. Doesn't make any sense. No one can hear you except the first row. You're always talking about public. Is it really public? Is it public? Can I have a look at it and download it tonight? We are delivering a presentation of what has been done. Just a second. So it is public. As soon as the report is being delivered in the next Mobility Advisory Board, I can bring it up, and the members of the Mobility Advisory Board can be asked whether it's a topic that what has been mentioned individually is delivered to the public as well. And if there's a broad willingness to do so, I don't think that anyone from our side will have a problem to indicate what individual people have said and make it available. I don't have a problem with that. We will do that if it's being asked for, and the Council of Aldermen doesn't have a problem. It's not a problem, but at the next Mobility Advisory Board, I mentioned this proposal, and if there's a consensus-based decision to do so, we won't have a problem. And in the minutes, we can read that these questions have been asked whether the vignette system is abolished, and the answer was, this is not a topic here. Acoustically, I didn't understand. So in the Mobility Advisory Board, there has been a question by one member to abolish the parking vignette for private users, and the answer was, this is not a topic here. Still didn't understand? Okay. Now, we have still time for one or two questions. I'm having a look in the first row. Yes, a microphone for the first row, please. Thank you very much. Please wait. The mic is arriving right now. Can you hear me? Well, you're presenting nice plans, but how will this work in the future? Now we have money to do so, maybe we won't have in the future. And a city without cars, there will be no economy. We will die. And for the frontalier, the commuters, if they don't get here, you all have problems with your pension. I worked abroad, I don't have. Please don't forget about your willingness to receive a pension. Now we are rich, we can make decisions like that, but maybe we won't be anymore in the future. Please think about this thoroughly. That was just an opinion, not a question. One more question, maybe? But without a microphone? Black sweater. I can see you over there. Microphone is arriving. Just a moment. Moyen. So I would have three questions. First, the audit study has been drafted here, but the problem is everybody could answer the questions. How can you prove that there was no biased selection? Because each and everyone could answer, and the answers are representing the majority of the population. Another question I'd like to ask, seeing the negative impact of the tram on the business and shops, do you have a financial compensation plan if all the plans you are delivering right now would be a flop? And finally, I'd like to ask, seeing the fact that we've been trying now to integrate everything in the infrastructures, cars and bicycles and tram and even pedestrians on the same roads and connections, we can invest more than $1 billion for the tram. Couldn't we invest in an extension of infrastructures, allowing each and everyone to use it without sacrificing any of the groups? Thank you. No, maybe as far as I could understand, acoustically, it wasn't obvious. The part concerning an extension of infrastructure, if I understood you correctly. But the framework we can spread here is determined by the width of streets and house facades. So this cannot be extended as compared to what we are having right now. And we will certainly try to find an optimized way of organizing all this, but this is not necessarily a question of money, but rather a question of priorities to be determined to spread what kind of spaces for what types of users. And we have tried to give you an indication about our objectives in this area in the future. Concerning the other points, Mr. Goldschmidt, you were asking about the people who took part in the survey. Each and everyone had access to it, and we do know that the results that we've been presenting here are results of all those who really took part in it. One slide, maybe not presented tonight, but different age categories did not really participate. 18 to 24, if I remember correctly, were not heavily involved. This has been done online for most of it. Answers were online. You could do it on a paper base as well. So if you have a closer look at the figures, you can see that these figures cannot correspond to 100% to reality. Just an example. It's not that I'm in favor or against it. It's just reality. We have 12 areas where participation, I think 31 or 36% of people from the city did also use a bicycle. If that would be the case, we would have 40,000 subscribers, but it's only 18,000 subscribers. But it's not about those who participated do have a subscription with Movilo. We know about this. The results we've presented here are determining certain objectives to be fixed, but we will have more detailed plans in the future, together with you, of course. And we will have a look at the possibilities to do so, and the mobility plan for 2035 will be that you've been talking about infrastructures. Mr. Hoffman did answer already. You can wonder whether you still want tunnels to be built for cars. Question we've received often, Boulevard, Charlotte, tunnels for cars, is that still an objective? That's not realistic, but if we should do so, there would be additional transit traffic attracted due to this, but we'd rather have people working at Kirchberg that they drive via the motorway and not through the city. That's important. People coming downtown with their car, they need it because they don't have another possibility, or because this is the easiest possibility for them because there are 3, 4, 5, or buses are not interesting solutions for them. But if we don't want to build additional street or road infrastructure with tunnels to have more transit traffic through the city. This is quite clear. Thank you, Mr. Goldschmidt. Then I would like to say that it's almost 8 o'clock. Mr. Wilmes had the initial word, and I will give you the final word as well. Thank you very much. In the name of the Council of Aldermen, I'd like to thank all of you for being with us tonight, to listen to our presentation, ask questions. Thank all those who participated in this survey as well. And we invite you to continue contributing with questions and comments. We are in a process here where it's not the Council of Aldermen's mobility plan, of course, but for all of them living here and coming to the city, and we have to continue this and reflect what's being asked for. We are here for you. We can encounter you. You can write to us as well. Addresses have been delivered, and this process will certainly be continuing with the different steps that have been indicated already before arriving at the plan. But please continue contributing. It's really important that you continue sharing. Mr. Da Silva, working on the project, has written down lots and lots of notes here. Everything has been written down, so nothing is being lost here. All your suggestions and worries are being taken into account. It's a really emotional topic as well. Traffic and mobility. Mr. Orr, Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Goldschmidt, thank you very much. Mr. Wilmers as well. Mr. Da Silva, of course. Thank you to all of you for participating, for sharing your views with us. Please continue your active involvement. Thank you to all those in the street. Thank you to be with us in the live stream as well, following along. And whatever your transport mode to get here has been, please return home safely. Thank you very much and good night.